Next up in my continuing retrospective series on the career of Joseph Cotten is The Farmer's Daughter, released in 1947 and also stars Loretta Young, Ethel Barrymore, Charles Bickford. It was produced by Joseph Cotten's good friend and frequent collaborator David O. Selznick and was directed by H.C. Potter. The farmer's daughter of the title is a young woman named Katie Holstrom, played by Loretta Young, who leaves her family farm and moves to the city, intending to go to school and become a nurse. There are some unfortunate incidents along the way that end up leaving her broke, and she ends up needing to take a job, a temporary job, as a maid at the house of Congressman Glenn Morley, played by Joseph Cotten. Of course, the two quickly begin falling for one another, but a series of events leads to the opposing political party recruiting Katie to also run for Congress, something which could tear the two of them apart. I just have to start by saying this movie was an absolute delight, and I can't get over how much fun I had watching it. Joseph Cotten is, as usual, excellent in this movie as the congressman. I think he can play these types of parts so well. He can bring such a great sense of humor and just such charisma to these parts, and I just enjoy him so much in here. But the actual main character of the movie is Loretta Young. And she too is just fantastic in this movie. She's such an endearing, sweet character, and quite quickly early on we learn that she comes from a Swedish family. And I'll admit that got me a little bit worried, just because I know the Swedish accent was one that was gone to very often in older movies, and anyone who knows the filmography of John Ford knows that it's an accent that can be very easily gone too broad with. And I was a little curious how that was all going to sound, but Loretta Young does it so beautifully. It's there, but it's very controlled. It's not by any means eye-rollingly strong. It's all very well done and subtle. But back to her character, she's such a strong, helpful person, and a main point of her character is that she won't take anything off of anyone. And she's actually a pretty good role model now that I think about it. She continually speaks her mind and questions things when people are trying to get something over on her or sell her something that isn't true or isn't right. She's very quick to push back, and she's not shy, and just a really good character and kind of unusual for a 1940s romantic comedy like this. This movie is really good at avoiding cliche, and that's something I'm going to bring up a lot during this review. But the first thing that I want to say that applies to that is just the whole idea that she is seen as an innocent character, but not naive. I think it could have been very easy to show her as this simple country girl that doesn't understand very much, or the big city dwellers could have very easily, bulldozed her. But instead, she's very politically aware and politically savvy, and she's very educated on what everyone that Joseph Cotten's character deals with and ends up at the house, what they stand for and what they voted on, and she very much has an interest in all of that. And she even pushes back to Joseph Cotten about what the government has actually done and has not done for ordinary, hardworking people. And I think it kind of serves as a good wake-up call for his character. Just talk about the love story of the movie. I think it's really well defined and really shown realistically how, right from the start, you can see that the two of them appreciate one another and they kind of are building a friendship together, and that turns into romance as the movie goes along. And again, how this movie avoids cliche, it almost totally sidesteps the whole class issue, which I think many movies would very quickly exploit and go to that. And we don't have to deal with that here. The two of them communicate as equals, even though he is a wealthy politician and she is a penniless country girl. That doesn't come up, and there isn't any kind of ridiculous hand-wringing about, oh, we can't be together because of this, it would never work. All of that is just completely avoided, and was really refreshing. I feel like that's an easy conflict to go to, and they just don't even bother with that at all. The fact that they come from two different worlds kind of informs their view of one another, but again, they can just communicate and talk as equals together, even though she is working at his house. I think it should be noted that he starts falling for her probably a lot quicker than she does for him. Probably almost from the first scene when she shows up and he's kind of taken aback a little bit just by this very plain speaking servant in their house. And by the next scene already, he's just hanging on her every word. And again, Joseph Cotten's performance, he can do that so effortlessly, it looks like. I'm sure it's not, but it's just so much fun to watch, and her living her life as she always has, even if she's in totally different circumstances than she grew up in, she just still carries on with these traditions and the way that she's always worked, and it's just commonplace to her. The movie has so many really hilarious scenes, actually. There's one where she ends up having to give Joseph Cotten a massage, and just it's a combination of his reaction and her just methodically going about this, and Charles Bickford, who I'll talk about right away, he is standing back, and his pained expressions as he is observing all this were very, very funny. Charles Bickford, as I was saying, plays Mr. Clancy, the butler. And he too was just such a great character, and he's such a great actor too, at that bringing this character to life. It's so funny to watch, because from the first scene he's in, you can tell that he would like to be seen as having this persona of a cantankerous old man. But that grumpiness, or whatever you want to call it, is just such a thin veneer that already just a couple minutes after meeting Katie, you can see him smiling to himself and taking a liking to her very quickly. And just watching Katie and Mr. Clancy's relationship grow was also just really fun. He tries to guide her through the social events that are being hosted at the house and kind of tell her when to maybe step back. Don't voice every opinion you have. It might work better in this scenario not to do that. And just their whole back and forth, and how he kind of takes this fatherly interest in her, was just really nice and really, as I said, fun to watch. He really takes her under his wing. And there's one scene later on in the movie, it's not a big scene or a long scene or anything, but it kind of tugs at your heartstrings a little bit, because you see that they've grown really close. Ethel Barrymore plays Joseph Cotten's mother, and she's seen as an older, very politically motivated person in those circles. And I guess her late husband was also a congressman, I think, and it was just interesting seeing that play out, where it's probably still true today. These older, wealthy people do have a lot of say in who gets nominated and how campaigns are run. But just stepping away from that, her and Charles Bickford together are also a great team. They have a good friendship, and again, they don't even address the class issue between them. They're just seen as good old friends, and he happens to work there and do the butler job. But they call each other by first name, and their banter back and forth is really playful. I was going to say it's kind of like an old married couple, but not really. They're just like good old best friends. One really great scene that illustrates this is we're told that every day in the winter, Katie always goes out and goes for a run, and then she'll go skating on this little lake that's outside the house. And Joseph Cotten, who's wanting to spend as much time with her as possible, goes out to join her for that. And we're seeing some of what they're talking about back and forth, but a lot of it is seen from inside the house, as Ethel Barrymore and Charles Bickford are standing by the big picture window watching them. And just their narration of the scene back and forth is also just so funny, and really showcases these two old pro actors. Before I forget, I have another recommendation for you of a great Charles Bickford movie, and that is Four Faces West, a Western with him and Joel McCrea and Francis D. And there too, Charles Bickford, just such a phenomenal actor. He could play that part, which is the the line between good guys and bad guys is very thin in that movie and crosses back and forth, and he makes that character really interesting and endearing as well in that movie. There's also an amazing array of old character actors in this movie, alongside the main four stars. Quite early on we see, and they come back later in the movie, the brothers of Katie's character. Two of them are James Arness and Lex Barker. And that was really fun seeing them so young, and when they come back later in the movie, they're really funny and protective over Katie, and it's just a really fun family dynamic. Harry Shannon plays her father. I've been trying to get to know the names of all these character actors because there's so many that I love seeing, and I never know what their names are. But Harry Shannon, he shows up in so many movies like this, and he's always an older, wise man often. Reese Williams shows up as a particularly unsavory character. I was not a fan of his. I don't think you're supposed to be, but he was pretty slimy and kind of risque, some of the stuff he is hinting at and implying. There's also Harry Davenport, who shows up as a doctor. So Tom Powers, Thurston Hall, another congressman, a very loud, overblown figure. Don Beto, Frank Ferguson, Charles Lane, who I think must have one of the longest lists of credits ever. The man seems to be in every movie from the 30s and 40s. And Charles McGraw, who of course shows up as a thug. There are so many more, but I'll stop there just for time's sake. The movie does take a couple of twists along the way to the ending. At one point, I thought the movie was looking like it was about to end, and I got a little bit worried. I thought if it had ended right at that point, it really kind of would have undercut the point that the rest of the movie was trying to make. But of course, I had no need to worry. It takes a turn and goes to an ending that I really was not expecting, but it was perfect. The movie is actually something of a political statement, I think. It takes a very Mr. Smith Goes to Washington-esque view of an idealistic outsider becoming embroiled in the dirty business of political life. I think it was an excellent choice for the movie not to name which political party which characters belong to. I think that's a very quick and easy way to alienate half your audience, and just doing it this way is so much better, and it doesn't get into too many specifics or anything about what issues they're actually in conflict about. But just the idea, yes, there's the two parties, that's good enough, and you can tell your story just as easily without getting too specific about that. Like I said, Katie is idealistic, and I think the whole movie's viewpoint is as well, showing the two sides ending up needing to set aside their differences and work together and really become a perfect team. Oh, and also, along the way to the ending, there is one wild fistfight scene that I was not expecting. And again, how they kind of subvert your expectations. I was thinking that Joseph Cotten's character would probably be seen as, a weaker, genteel character, a city fella who wouldn't dirty his hands in something like a fistfight. And I was proven wrong on that score too. He very much gets into it, and this congressman is right in the middle of the fighting. It was a super entertaining scene. James Arness in there is doing some pretty crazy stunts. I don't know if it would be so easy to get a stuntman the size of James Arness, so I'm thinking it was him. And it was just a really good scene that I wasn't expecting in a movie like this, but was a lot of fun as well. And finally, the main thing that I think sets this movie apart is the fact that Katie is a woman running for Congress, but that doesn't really come up at all. The main criticism from her opponents is that she's inexperienced, which I think is probably actually a benefit because she doesn't have the existing baggage and corruption that a lot of the more experienced political players in the movie have. She is a really strong character that just happens to be a woman. The fact that she's a woman is not the defining feature of her character, and that's something that I think more modern movies could take pointers from. It doesn't have to be that all strong female characters have to be the same mold in every movie. They can just be a well-written, developed character, and that should be the goal, above all else. Nobody can say that there weren't great parts for women in the old days of Hollywood, and if they do, check out this movie. It is a prime example. This is a great story about doing what's right, standing up for what you believe in, above politics or anything else that you could just easily be pushed along with. Just doing what really is the right thing and being yourself and not what a lot of people around you want you to be or tell you you should be. And it's also a really fun romantic comedy. This is just a wonderful, feel-good movie, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. I just want to say thank you for checking out this review. If you enjoyed it, please check back to my channel for more reviews like this, and I'll see you next time. Adios for now.